Let's talk about recipes.
Should we?
Yes, let's do.
Let's talk about food, baby.
Okay, I'm Candace.
I'm Natalia.
And this is not a single fork, just another podcast about food and cooking, but we're keeping it real.
Real. What do you got today? I see your little
paperwork.
You have a list.
I have my list as usual. Love my lists. So when I said we're talking about recipes, we are kind of talking about recipes. So
you went down a rabbit hole.
I went down a rabbit hole, and here's why.
Everyone gather around, listen.
Yes, listen to me. So I get the newsletter from New York Times Cooking every day. And they always have new recipes, or they recycle old recipes, whatever. So this recipe came up, and it was called ham and cheese sliders.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, let's see what that says.
Right. How can ham and cheese sliders be new?
Yeah. And how can it be original?
Right.
So I went to the recipe and I read all the ingredients, and I was like, that sounds a lot like Paula Deen's ham and cheese sliders. I know we're not supposed to say the name Paula Deen, but nevertheless,
that you slather with butter and Hawaiian rolls and put them in the oven. Those,
yeah, God, and it's a really cool recipe actually, because you take the whole
top
sheet of rolls and you cut them in half, open it up, and you make it all on the top, and then close it back up and put it in the oven. And Bob's your uncle. And so
you have to cover it in butter, though.
That's you have a butter
it's like
spread.
Butter or oregano, parsley, some shit.
I think
garlic,
it's thyme.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's got a number of
but
ingredients.
It makes a difference.
But it's a really good. It's a really good appetizer.
It is.
It's a nice heart, like for a Super Bowl or something like that. It's a great appetizer. So anyway, I'm looking at it, and then I start thinking, how many ingredients? Because I'm working on a cookbook. How many ingredients do you have to change in order for a recipe to not be plagiarized, basically?
Right. Like how can Paula Deen, the unnamed, and New York Times have a brand new ham and cheese?
Right.
What makes it different? One ingredient?
Well, no, actually not. There were several ingredients changed in the spread. But the ham's the same. The cheese is the Hawaiian rolls. The method.
You cover them in butter and put them in the oven.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Yeah. So it again got me thinking about, okay, so how do you go through anyone, whether you're a chef or you're a home cook, and you're just trying to be creative and you want to come up with an original recipe that you can say, look, this is my recipe.
I came up with this.
Yeah. How do you do that?
So you plagiarize a little and then add something else?
Oh, well, because it's hard to be completely original.
It is. I mean, look at music. Music does it too. It is hard. I mean, it's hard with food.
Well, it not only is hard, it's people who write recipes get very, I hate to use the word covetous, but it's like they're very, those are their babies.
Right.
And they don't want somebody just taking their recipe and calling it their own when it's not.
Yeah.
So I found this blog post from 2010, and it was actually citing Julia Child.
Okay.
And Julia Child, among many other things, in the 80s had a column in Parade magazine. I remember reading it.
She wrote it?
She wrote it.
Well, it was her recipe.
It was her recipe.
It was her shtick.
And it was her voice. How about that? And this was from 1983.
Okay.
And so she did this recipe for cranberry chutney. And she made her description of it was, that it was Thanksgiving, and they had cranberries, and they wanted to come up with something different from a relish or sauce or anything like that. So they came up with cranberry chutney. So they published this cranberry chutney in this article. And then she said, not long after they had published it, she ran across a recipe that was almost exactly the same that that was not hers and not from anybody who worked on her team.
Right.
And the same thing happened with, what was it? It was they wanted to create, this is so 1980s. They wanted to create a souffle in a crepe.
What?
Yeah. So you'd make a souffle and I guess you roll it in crepe. I don't know. And then, so they did that. Okay. They published that recipe. And then the next week on her TV show, a chef comes in with almost exactly the same recipe. That he hadn't seen her recipe.
Yeah, interesting.
And so what she says, and it's really interesting, she says there's no explanation for this spontaneous phenomenon. Is it mental telepathy?
It's seasonal.
She says it is that recipes and ideas float about in the stratosphere and our antennae pick them up. It does happen to me, and this is Julia speaking, to me anyway, often enough that it cannot be coincidence alone.
Well, I think this goes back to a podcast or two before when we talked about food trends. Souffles and crepes, that was a trend. So why not stick them together? You know what I mean? So they were all probably thinking, they were like, how do I think outside the box? And that's the same with like the cranberry. It was probably seasonal. It was probably Thanksgiving. And they were like, how do I do something different? You know? So I think that all ties in together there, but it doesn't surprise me at all. Like it's the same kind of minds, right? Like chefs.
Yeah.
Trying to think of something different to do. And of course, somebody's going to come up with the same thing that you do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know it does make sense. And the other thing that it brought to mind was, for instance, when we did our big in-person cooking classes, I would take recipes from various chefs, but in the class, I had to change them in order to teach them.
Or you would say, if there were specific ones, this comes from so-and-so.
Correct.
I mean, and you would say that.
Yes, but my point is that you can take that core recipe and you can change it on the fly.
And make it, and that's yours.
And then it becomes, I mean, I guess I'm kind of throwing it out there. Does that make it mine then? Does that make it our cooking class recipe?
Right, our creation.
Because I'm not doing it.
But it's just a modified version of somebody else's.
Right.
I mean, basically.
So does that count?
I don't know.
I don't know the answer to that.
To me, that feels like cheating.
Well, I know.
Not cheating, but you know what I mean. Like, it's not, I can't be like, I came up with this all on my own because 95% of it was here and then I just added a little sprinkle.
Well, I get what you're saying. And I think that that's where you are like, you're torn with, okay, so for instance, you have a recipe that you love, but you tweak it.
Right. That's true.
So then does it become your recipe?
Because you change it to what you like even more.
I just one sprang to the front of my head. Yes. The savory apricot dressing that I make.
Yes.
Okay. So that started out as a recipe from Sarah Lee Chase.
Okay. That
she did she had a storefront for her catering business called Open House, I think. The cookbook was called Open House. This is the 80s. Open House cookbook. And she had a savory, what did she call it? I think she called it savory sausage and apricot dressing or something like that. And so she used very similar ingredients that I use because I started with her recipe. But she used sausage, a heavy sausage. She used Pepperidge Farm, the dry breadcrumb dressing.
The mixture.
Or the herb stuffing. Mm-hmm. She used pear, and she put chestnuts in it.
Oh, okay.
So
did you make it that way the first time?
I made it that way several times. And it just, I thought it was really good, but there were just things about it that I thought could be better.
Uh-huh.
So instead of just a heavy sausage meat, a lot of times, and in fact, this last time, I substitute in turkey or turkey sausage. But if I use turkey, then I make my own seasoning into it. Mm-hmm. Then what was the else? Oh, so I do
Pear.
my own. Well, I do my own like stuffing crumbs from focaccia. So I use an herb focaccia,
Yeah.
and that gives it a little bit more body,
Yeah.
I think. Let's see. Then instead of a pear, because I don't like pears and I don't like the texture of
They get
pears,
gritty.
I use a Granny Smith apple
Uh-huh.
because it has that kind of bite, sour,
And it's crunchy.
It has
stays
acid.
crunchy.
It has acid. It stays really crunchy,
Yeah.
and even when you cook it, and so you still have that structure, texture. What else was there?
Apricots.
Apricots I still use. Chestnuts.
Mm.
I really. Do you think? Okay, this is chestnuts in a jar. Okay, so like, are they braised? What are they?
Yeah, they're like
They're soft. They're just
soft.
Yeah.
But wait, not water chestnuts.
No.
Just regular chestnuts.
Regular whole chestnuts.
The texture gets weird.
And I don't think they taste like
They
very
don't
much.
have much flavor.
So I really think that was a filler.
Yeah, they don't have much. I could see that being a
But
filler.
an expensive filler.
Well, not back in the day. Chestnuts were a thing. Chestnuts roasting over the open fire. Like,
Well, I know, but
that's
you
a
still had to
throwback
buy.
thing.
You had to buy them in a big jar at Williams Sonoma.
Oh yeah, no.
So they were expensive.
Yeah.
So I
no
just
chestnuts.
dropped them out.
But here's the thing. You completely changed that recipe.
Yeah, I did.
Like that is a completely different. You could make those two things and have them side by side, and they would look and taste completely different.
Well, I think they would look a lot the same.
But they wouldn't, because this is boxed breadcrumbs. This is big chunks of focaccia.
Well, that's true.
You changed a lot. You didn't just go ham and cheese sandwich on a Hawaiian roll, butter, and instead of oregano, I'm going to use thyme. Oh, my recipe! Like you changed almost everything. Like
I did change a lot.
Almost everything.
Yeah, but that's the one that comes to mind.
And that progressed probably over years.
It did because the first year I think I dropped out the chestnuts because I was like, this doesn't add
Fuck
anything.
the chestnuts. Yeah.
And then it was like, why would I use somebody else's breadcrumb stuffing when I can make it myself?
It'll taste better.
Yeah. So it's things like that though that you can do.
But I think now that is your recipe.
Yeah, I think that is
your recipe.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a fair thing.
That's
to say.
fair. That's fair.
That's not cheating.
I can take that one.
That's not cheating.
No, but I did change a lot. That's true. But there are other things where if you, and the example you were giving with the ham and cheese sliders, that's true. It's just, if you change the herb, that doesn't count.
That doesn't count.
It really doesn't. I don't know that was the only thing that they didn't do. There were several other ingredients that they just dropped out. That actually, one of them was, because I think you mix this into the butter, was Worcestershire.
Uh-huh.
See, I think that would really help it.
Well, you love it on everything. You love it on everything.
I could drink it.
Yeah.
I could just drink it.
That's so interesting. Did you grow up with that?
Worcestershire?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did your mom eat it?
Yeah.
On what?
Well, she would use it in a lot of. She would do what she called doctor.
Yeah, that's a very specific flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Not bitter, but like.
Well, it's very savory.
It's
savory.
Umami. It's salty.
Salty.
It's, it's a very specific flavor that, yes, I like when it's doctored into things, added into things, but you like it by itself.
I like it by itself. I really like it
with cottage cheese.
I love it in cottage cheese.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
So weird.
It's umami.
Yeah.
Umami. Yeah. But she would use it in a lot of different things. And I just grew up with it. Yeah. So it's just it's a familiar flavor. Yeah. Yeah. But I know to a lot of people, it's like, I don't know.
It's different. It's different. It's harsh almost. Yeah. I mean, it is. It can be by itself.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would probably take a spoonful and be okay with it.
I know you would.
But creating recipes, and a home cook probably goes, oh my God, I could never do that. But that's when I kind of and again, I like HelloFresh.
Uh-huh.
I think HelloFresh is great. But what I take HelloFresh to task on is you get a recipe, and I know that people just want a recipe that they can recreate and it tastes great. And I get that. And I'm so glad that people are eating fresh food. If nothing else, it does that. But you can't take what you do when you do a HelloFresh recipe unless
you know what you're doing.
unless you really know what you're doing.
Because we could do it.
Yes. But if you're just starting out,
No.
you can't take that recipe and understand what you're doing. I mean, well, let me put it this way. If
Why
you
the
don't-
flavors work together.
Why the flavors work together, why you do things in a certain order,
Right.
How you layer the flavors, because HelloFresh really does a good job with
They
that.
They do.
But if you don't understand why you're doing what you're doing, you can't just say, oh, I made this, whatever it was, with my HelloFresh recipe. Now I'm going to make this as a takeoff from my HelloFresh recipe. And I know but there may be some people out there that want to do that.
They want to do that. It's paint with numbers.
Yes.
It's paint with numbers. I can paint the fuck out of numbers. But I'm not going to just make you a piece of art.
You're not going to be able to do that even at Pinot's Palette.
No, it looks like shit. It looks like a fucking child did it. I'm not keeping that shit. I'm going to sell it in the garage sale for $5.
$5?
Or maybe just give it away for free.
I think give it away.
But it's the same thing. If you don't understand the concept and you don't want to, some people don't want to.
I know, and
then
that's
it's
fair.
a great just get it done. You're eating fresh food. You're not ordering shit. But I also like it because, one, I don't like going to the grocery store.
Yeah, there's that.
And two, they do a really good job of not having a bunch of shit to throw away.
Yes.
You don't end up throwing away a bunch of food, which I do when I go to the grocery store because I'm like, oh, I've got to cook for 15 and there's 2.
Yeah, I know.
I do it terribly.
And everything's prepackaged.
And people like you and I that do understand it can take that recipe and go, oh, I can make this again, but with turkey and a kiwi and orange. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. But I think that's
rare.
That's what's missing from it. Is the kind of the
you need
underlying
like a HelloFresh plus one, like the next level up.
Yeah,
like a level up.
Yeah, let's teach you
like
the basics.
And
then
this is like the VIP. Yeah.
And then maybe you won't need HelloFresh because you can do it all yourself.
Yeah, and then that defeats the purpose of HelloFresh because they want you to keep buying it.
I know. I understand that.
Sorry, HelloFresh, but you can still sponsor us.
I still like HelloFresh. I didn't say I don't like it, but it has its limitations. Yes. If you want to really broaden your horizons.
But I do think it's a great jumping off point. And if you haven't tried any of those, and there's lots of different ones, box subscriptions. It's just that's the one we've both tried.
And it is a very good one.
And I've heard people complain about portion size, and there's nothing wrong with the portion size.
No.
It's very
portion
normal.
size and it being too small.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
To me, it's very normal.
I do. Yeah, absolutely.
Very satisfying.
And if you are eating more than that, then you're eating too much.
Yeah. Have dessert. Have a cookie when you're done. You're still hungry. Eat a cookie.
You're still hungry. Have some dessert.
It's good.
That's
good
what it's
you.
for.
Yeah.
So create recipes and stay fresh.
Chestnut bags.